data in S3 and in serverless applications, or we have S3 as the source of truth, and many serverless applications coming and taking that data, you get paranoid. You don't want all the data to be exposed, or you might need different views for your data depending on which application is requesting that data. So what you do is you grab that data, when you store it, you transform it and you store it somewhere else, and then by the end of times you have 27 different copies of the same data with more or less the same information for different applications, because we don't want to expose everything. If you have this problem or others related to data in serverless applications, you are in the right video. I will show you how you can have one source of data and many applications accessing the same data and getting the exact information that they need. And all of that is controlled by your data plane and not the applications. Let's get into the video. So to solve these problems, there's many ways to do it. One way is to have your data, add some kind of business logic layer, either a server or something, that all your requests through your data goes through that kind of proxy. And then you have control of what is being exposed, and you have the data once, and that's one way to solve it. That's okay, but it has the problems that you need to have some server in the middle, and then you need to have this kind of non-event-driven approach, because, well, now you created the data and the data is kind of needs someone to handle it, and not good. Another approach that is very common is to have the data replicated in multiple places in S3 with different formats depending on who is consuming the data. This is handy, this is fast, because each application will consume the data directly from the right bucket. But again, what will happen is that you have 27 different sources of truth that you need to maintain. If you update the data here, it needs to populate everywhere and it will explode your head, and you don't want that. So I will introduce you S3 Object Lambda. S3 Object Lambda is the solution to this problem. What it means is that you have your S3 bucket that has data, you have all your original data there, and then for each application you create an access point. Access points were announced in re:Invent last 2 years, in 2019, and basically you can create different access points for different applications. That's a way to access the data in S3. And one new thing that was added there is that you now can transform the data for each access point. So imagine that you have original data store and you want to have an endpoint that will anonymize the data because you want to send it to some analytics service to, do some calculations or whatever, and you don't need to have the, phone number or email address or whatever of that customer sent to the analytics. So instead of storing it 2 times, you store it once, and you use that functionality of the S3 Object Lambda to transform the data whenever you are fetching it from the original source. And you can do it for multiple things. You can do it for anonymizing data. You can do it for transforming and just get, for example, the abstract of a blog post. Imagine you're storing blog posts and it's free, and you just want to get the first paragraph because that's what you will show in your web page. You're not showing the blog post all the time, so you just grab the right information. Or you want to translate it on the fly, so you store it in English and then you use Object Lambda to translate it to some other language, and voila, you have it in multiple languages. So you can do whatever you can do in the Lambda function with this transformation. So it's super powerful. So in order to use this, you need to have a data stored in a bucket. Then you will create an access point. Then you will give the access point a Lambda function to the transformation. And then whenever you are getting the data, you call the access point and you get the data with the transformed data. It's very simple. Let's get into the code and see how this works. Before starting the code, if you're liking this video, hit the like button And if you're not subscribed, subscribe and share it with your friends. This helps me a lot. And if you have something to say in the comments, say it. YouTube loves comments and I want to grow this channel. So now let's go to the code. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create a new directory. As always, I always start with clean directories. You can always find the code in GitHub. The link is in the description box. And there I will create a super simple template. All we are doing today is infrastructure as code. So we just will be building everything, the S3 bucket, the access point, the Lambda function that will do the transformation. Everything will happen in this template YAML. I will need to use some CloudFormation for some of the S3 parts. So this is a SAML template where I'm going to start building. So the first thing we want to do is to create the S3 bucket. I'm going to create an S3 bucket with the name bucket with P, private information or something like that, or personal information. So that's what I'm going to do. And this bucket will have the stack name, so it's unique. Go for that. Then we are going to add the access point for the bucket, and bucket can have multiple access points. You can have access points that have different permissions, and you can give different applications different permissions on what they can do in the objects of the bucket. In this case, I will just create an access point for that bucket, and a very simple one. But you can add more complexity here if you need so. The access point name is bucket with P access point. Always very original. And then I will create my anonymizer function, and this is a sum function that we will be creating later. That what it has permissions to write get object response in the S3 object. So this is new. This comes with the S3 Object Lambda, and this is a new type of permission. So basically I will allow to do the transformation and put it in the access point, basically. So that's what we want to have. And then I will give also access to comprehend, because we are going to use comprehend in a moment to do some of the anonymizing features of the PII. So this is a node 12 function, and you will find it in there, but we are not creating that yet because we have to add now a little bit more things. So now we have the access point, and we need to add the Lambda access point. What this will do is link the access point that we just created with the Lambda function and do the transformation. So for doing this access point, we need the Lambda function, and we need the access point, and the access point needs the bucket. So that's why I'm building in this order. And then basically there you will say, okay, what is the access point for this Lambda access point? And then what will be the Lambda doing the transformation for this? So it's pretty straightforward. It just looks ugly because there is some joins there of CloudFormation, but besides that, it's not big deal. And then in the transformation configuration, you will see that the Lambda function is there. I'm grabbing the ARN. So this is ready to be deployed. If you download it, you can deploy it yourself because everything is kind of customized to stack names, so we will not have matching bucket names. The last thing I'm adding into my template is a couple of outputs, CloudFormation outputs. One is the anonymizer function ARN, just to know. And then the other one is the S3 Lambda access point ARN that we will need later when we are doing the upload of the GET requests. So that's something we will need. I will show you how to use it in a second. But that's all our template. Is pretty straightforward. One S3 bucket, one access point, one Lambda object access point, and the function. So nothing special. And then we are going to the project, and we are going to create the anonymizer function. And this function is going to use comprehend. So here we are going to use the AWS SDK. But let's go by steps and see how this function works. So you can see there that I'm using Axios. I will be using Axios to get the information from the bucket, because we will get an URL and we need to fetch information from there using HTTP. So that's why I have Axios in place. You can use your favorite library for that. And then our Lambda function will have multiple parts. The first part is that you will see the event object, and the event object in the case of an S3 Object Lambda, it will come with special information. If you know, whenever a Lambda function gets triggered, it comes with an event object, and the event object really depends on who triggers the Lambda function. And in this case, it's the access point that is triggering, so it's putting kind of information in there. So you will see that we will need to get some special information from the event to then do the rest of the part. So this anonymizer function does many things. The first thing that we are going to do is to get the object from S3. So we are going to write code for that. Then we are going to transform the object, and in our case what we are going to do is to use a library that comprehends provide to remove the personal identifier information, the P, from our text. So we will have a text example file, and then we will pass it through this SDK, and it will remove everything. And we want it to start filling it with, like, I don't know, stars or something like that. And then finally what we are going to do is to write the object back into the response, so we will get it as the response of our thing. So that's kind of it. Whenever you're using Object Lambda, you need to return with status code 200. That's kind of based on the whole thing, so it works. So don't forget to return that. So now let's go and build the different parts of our anonymizer Lambda function. So now we will build the example file. I put it example.js, ignore that, it's example.txt, I will fix it later, but when I was doing this, I just put it JS. And this text I got from Amazon Comprehend. It's the example one that you will find there when you open the Comprehend examples in the AWS Management Console, but just put whatever text you want. It needs to be in English because this is configured to work in English. And that's kind of it. I like this text because it has a lot of different types of personal identifiable information, or P. So what I'm doing next is to deploy this application. This Lambda function doesn't do anything and it will fail, but I want to show you the event object and how it fails so you understand how it works. So we deploy this, some deployed, guided, we configure it, and then we let it deploy, and I will fast forward until it's done. So now all our resources are created, and we can see in the outputs that ARNs that we wanted, so that's good. And then we can get that S3 Lambda access point ARN from there because we need it. And then we also need to go to S3 and upload that example file, so we have something to get from S3. So just upload that file in your favorite way. You can use the AWS CLI or you can use the console as I'm doing now. So when you have those two things, then you can move to the next step. And the next step is basically using the AWS CLI to connect to that S3 Object Lambda access point that we just created to fetch the object. And this should go through the transformation Lambda that we just created. So if you can see here, it says AWS.region and the name of my region. My profile doesn't have a region configured and I like to pass it there. Then S3 API, so this is the API that we are going to use. Get object, the name of the method that we are going to use. Then we have to pass the bucket, and here is the ARN of our Lambda access point that we just created that we got as an output from CloudFormation previously. So here is where that comes into play. Then the key is the name of the file that we want to do this transformation, and is that example.txt that we just created with the data from Comprehend, that example test with a lot of personal identifiable information. And then finally is the where we want to get the data with which name. And here again, I made a mistake. I put it anonymize.csv. It needs to be anonymized.txt, but it works exactly the same if you do it wrong, so it doesn't matter. So with this, we are calling basically the Lambda function that is accesses with this access point. And because this will fail, S3 will try to call this twice. Well, the access point will try to call this Lambda twice to see if that was a problem of calling Lambda or there was a problem in the whole event-driven architecture world. But no, our Lambda function is not responsive, it's not doing what it should, so it failed. So that's what we expected. But we now can go to our logs and we can see what is in the S3 Lambda object event, and we can start analyzing what we can use from there. So here I'm using the serverless console that I always enjoy for my logs. I configuring it and I open the anonymizer function. So here you can see that the Lambda was executed a couple of times, and that the first thing, because that was the only thing we log, is the event object. And you can see it's quite long, it's quite verbose, but we need a couple of things from there. So the most important thing is that input S3 URL. So that's the URL that will basically allow us to fetch the object from S3. And that will fetch as the raw data object. So this Lambda function is running on the data plane, because basically here the Lambda function will execute and will be able to get all the information raw from S3. So this Lambda function has a lot of permissions on the S3. So again, this should belong to basically your data plane, where you will control the access on the file. So be careful on that. And then we need a couple of tokens that they are also there that we'll be using. So let's go back to the anonymizer function and work a little bit on the things that we need to get from the event. So these are the things that we need to get from the event: the output root and the request token. We need for passing later when we are writing to the S3 Object Lambda access point. We need to get those. Then we need the S3 URL whenever we are going to get that data from S3. And there's where we are going to use our HTTP library, in this case Axios, to do this request for us. So now we have everything basically to get started, and we can start getting the data from S3. So for that, as I said, we are going to use Axios, and we are just going to use the URL, a get method, and we want everything as an array buffer. So that's what the response we are expecting. And then we just call that and we wait, and we get back the response data. Nothing special. So next we need to do the transform of the object, but I will leave that for a moment. Now let's write the object into the S3 Object Lambda so we can focus on that, and then we go to comprehend. So for that, we will be using the AWS SDK to write the object that we just transformed into the access point. And you can find the information in the AWS SDK that you're using. I'm using JavaScript. You just go to S3 and then find the method that write get object response, and that's what you need to do. So read the documentation or just copy paste it from my video. So this method requires 3 parameters: the body, that is the text that we want basically to return, the request root, and the request token, that are the things that we just got from the event in the beginning of the class that we were writing. And then with that, we can call that method, and I'm going to create a function and call that method and handle all the errors there. But that's basically what the function is doing. So basically it's just saving an item to S3 access point and return it. So it's not saving, I would say it's writing the object response. So now let's go into the transform object. And the transform object is this part where we are gathering this text with a lot of personal identifiable information. We are passing it through comprehend. Comprehend is basically giving us an array of where our personal identifiable information is in that text, and we need to make that happen some magic, and then we output a text file that has, instead of the information, it has stars. So that's what we want to do. So I'll create a new method called detect personal identifiable entities, and this will be calling the comprehend AWS SDK method, that it's based on some parameters, in this case the language, and the text that we want to pass, like to check or validate. You pass that, and then it will return you some array with entities. So if you go to the AWS console, to Amazon comprehend, and we launch comprehend there, we can play a little bit with that. And that's the text you see there, is the same text that I have in my example. You can put whatever you like. And if you do analyze, then you can see that it can find different types of insights, like entities, key phrases, the language, the personal identifier information, sentiment, syntax. You can get quite a lot out of comprehend. I'm interested in the information. And here you can see that it has this underline under each of the pieces of this text that has identifiable information. So you can see, if you continue scrolling, that there is the results for what the AWS CDK returns. So that's the part that we are interested in. Those are the entities. So if you go down, you can see results and application integration, and there is the API response from whatever the AWS CDK will return us. And you can see that it's an array of entities that has a lot of things, one element per identifiable information, and each has a score. Usually all machine learning or artificial intelligence APIs return a score of how certain the algorithm thinks that this is a name. In this case, it's 99.9999%. And then the type, if it's a name, a credit card number, a telephone, a date, or whatever. So you can decide, okay, I don't care about date times. Dates are quite, so I will not care about it. I don't care about names, but I don't want any credit card information to leak. So here you can really emphasize on the credit card. So that's why you have the type. And then it has begin offset and end offset. And when we were seeing the example, it has some underline. So the beginning is the position in the string chain when the personal information starts, and the end is where it ends. So you can do this underlining, or you can add stars like what we are going to do. So this is the entities that the comprehend SDK returns and what we need and we have to work with. So if we go back to our function, I will create another method that basically will grab that personal information in the text and replace it with the stars. So what it does, it goes through each of the entities and it tries to find the information in the original text, and it's using another function that is doing the replacement of the text with the stars. So it grabs the original text and then it returns you like a clean piece of text. I'm pretty sure there are a million ways of doing this in a more efficient way, so don't judge me. This is a demo, but it works and it's quite fast. So after I have all this Anonymizer.js ready, now basically data comes in, we can fetch it from S3, then we can pass it through comprehend and we get the entities where the personal identifiable information is, and then we grab that entity array and we combine it with our file and we create a new file that is full of stars whenever there is some data, and then we send it back into the access point to complete the response. That's simple. So now we can go and do some deploy again and wait for this to deploy, and we can test it and you will see how it works. So I will speed this deployment until it's done. So now we finished deploying, we run again that AWS CLI command with the vision, with the S3 API. If you're doing this and you cannot find the S3 API get object in your AWS CLI, update the CLI. This is quite new, so it might not be available. Make sure that you have the latest and greatest of the versions of the AWS CLI. So then we run it with the access point and the element and the key that we want to get, and we will get back that content type, metadata, content length, whatever. But if we go to the file anonymizer.csv, we will be able to see the text that we just got back, the transform text. So I will put one text, the original text, and the transform text one in front of the other so you can see it better. And you can see here that we have the original text example that has names, and you can see now the anonymized version. It says hello ***, your company blah 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 with the credit card number blah blah blah, and then it's due by blah blah blah. So the data is very clean, it's very anonymized, and you cannot get any information out from here. If you like this video, please like it, comment it, tell me that you like it, share it. That's it for today. I hope you enjoy this content. This is something I think is quite powerful for serverless applications, that you can really embed Lambda functions into S3, and I think that will help a lot of people to re-architect their applications and have less pieces of data floating around with more or less the same information, having proxies in between and doing some magic there and having to maintain things. So I think this will help a lot of people to make more safe and better serverless applications. So I see you in the next episode of FooBar. Ciao, ciao!